record started. So welcome everyone to Healing Beauty. This is the place to empower your feminine heart in life, in business and in love. I'm Kelly Morgan, your host, and I am also going to be speaking to you today about the restoration of the divine feminine and how you can step into your feminine power. So as always, before we get started, I'm going to be inviting us to gather together. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and just really call and gather your energy into your body, feeling your feet on the ground, your sitting bones on the chair beneath you, and inviting your back to be held by the chair behind you. You just really call and gather all of your energy into your body now. And really breathing and calling your awareness down. Down past the throat, feeling your sacred breath. Breathing your body through your back, your chest, and down through your diaphragm, deeper down, all the way down to your navel, and then even deeper down to the triangular bone at the base of your spine, your sacrum. Just inviting your energies now to gather here, to almost spiral around your pelvic bowl, and spiraling deeper and deeper into the center of your hara, the center of your womb. As you come into embodied presence, into the throne of your divine feminine, settling down, taking some deep physical breaths, coming back to the physical edges of your body. And when you're ready, you can just begin to open your eyes. Welcome everyone. So today it's me speaking, and I'm going to be on my own. So your participation will be really appreciated. Please, in the comment box, give me questions and feedback as we go along. And I'm going to start off by sharing a little bit about my story, because we've heard all the other speakers in their story. So I'm going to start off by sharing mine, especially into this work. So I did have a previous life. I used to work in London in banking for a big Swiss bank for many years, for 12 years. And I was successful. I had a really good career. But I always had this question inside, was like, is this it? Like, okay, you know, there's financial gain, there's material wealth, but is this it? This isn't fulfilling. So 11 years ago, I moved to the island of Ibiza, which is an island just off the Mediterranean Sea. It's a very magical island. It's a very feminine, magnetic island. And I started doing fitness and detox retreats for a number of years. And anyway, one night I was asleep in my bed, and I got woken up, and this voice said very clearly, it's your purpose to awaken people's sacral chakra. Now, when that happened, I had no idea what that fully meant. And that led me on a journey of exploration. And actually then what happened in my late 30s, I had a miscarriage, and I thought that was my last chance to have a child. And I was really sad about it, as I think we all are. I don't think that the passing of time in a woman's life is really honoured in society, whether that's coming into menarche, coming into our first menstruation, whether that's coming out of maidenhood into motherhood, whether that's losing children, birthing children, and coming into the wise woman as well. None of these rituals are really honoured. And so anyhow, I was very upset. So I went to have a healing on my womb, and I literally thought it would just be, a nice healing. And what happened was all this wisdom and power awoke inside of me. And it took me several years to integrate that wisdom, to fully embody that wisdom and share that with everyone now. So that's a bit about my story. And so now I work I work with men and women to really awaken this sacred power center, our womb, which I'm going to be talking to you more about today. I have a really popular program called Awaken Your Womb, which for me takes you through the 8 steps of initiation to really step into your full feminine embodiment through the Holy of Holies, the womb space. I've also done other programs such as awakening and activating your sexual power, deep initiations for women to step into their full medicine power, and I do retreats in person and online groups. So that's about me, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the restoration of the divine feminine and stepping fully into your feminine power. So I want to start off, someone asked in the group, what is divine feminine? And I thought that was a really, really good question. So when we're looking at the energies of masculine and feminine, divine masculine and divine feminine, and we need both of them in the world, and they come together to create in all levels of existence, from the cosmic right down to us in our human bodies and even plants, those energies come together to birth. And so divine feminine is a receptive energy. She is the void, the emptiness, the pregnant pause. And in that emptiness, she is embodied through beingness, through receiving the moment, receiving the divine masculine, receiving wisdom. And so in that void, we are able to connect to the highest potential of our wisdom, the highest part of our intuition. And she is the part of us, as she is the unmanifest potential. She's connected to all that is, all of life, the earth and the cosmos. She's the part that is able to feel and connect to that infiniteness. And then so if she is the void, the receiving, the beingness, the masculine is the action, the projection, the forward focused energy, the organizing, the structuring. So he is almost organizing and structuring this great primordial energy that the feminine brings. And so for me, that is what feminine, our divine feminine is. And that is an infinite potential part of us that we can connect to. And this is the part that is being fully restored right now. There's been many lifetimes when we have felt that this energy is, coming back in, and then there's been a lot of distortion, the burning of the witches, women being legally owned by men for a very long time, and indeed in certain parts of the world that's still the case. Women not having a place in society, women not having a voice in society. And the last 60 years that started to change. And so we are seeing now, as within, so without, So meaning on a cosmic level and on a planetary level and on a humanity level and on an individual level, we are seeing this consciousness start to rise now. And so there is an invitation there to work with this consciousness consciously, or perhaps not to, because that is our invitation. And so when you work with this consciously, you're able to more fully embody it and receive the beauty of it, to receive the harmony that it brings, rather than unconsciously working with it, where it then brings up triggers for us, brings up shadow for us. And so one thing that I really want to talk about, I can't talk about the divine feminine unless I talk about the wounded feminine, the distorted feminine. And what I've seen, and what a lot of prominent speakers have seen, you know, in the rising of this feminine, is there are a lot of there's a lot of energy, a lot of people that are actually acting from wounded feminine right now. So there's a lot of what I call divine feminine, or distorted feminine, actually, a lot of distorted feminine that's dressed up as divine. So some people have felt this energy rising, and let's say they kind of want to get on the bandwagon, and they haven't fully resurrected that energy with them. They haven't worked on their shadows to really step into their divine energies. And so I'm seeing a lot of feminine empowerment dressed up as divine, and essentially underneath it is this wounded feminine energy. So then you may ask, well, what is wounded feminine energy? So wounded feminine is essentially when the feminine part of us, the feminine part of our divine nature, as John spoke about yesterday, the divine, the left hand side of the God, the feminine counterpart to Christ, the feminine counterpart to Shiva, to whatever, you know, area you're looking in, when she has been dishonored for thousands of years, when she has not been recognized as the left-hand side of God on all levels of existence, then we, as holding that divine feminine energy, have a very wounded energy. It's like our feminine has not been honored for thousands of years in our ancestral line, in our culture, in our education. And so what has happened is that as she has not been dishonored, it's like she's been shattered and fragmented by this deep dishonoring, this abuse, this trauma. It's very deep trauma and abuse when you are not fully recognized and honored for who you are. The feminine way of understanding the world doesn't have the language, because we are using a man-made language. The people that have been in power for a few thousand years have skewed it towards them. And so as the feminine has been diminished, we have felt that on all levels of our existence. And so it ends up like the feminine is, it's like the masculine way of seeing and perceiving and working in the world is seen as the norm. And so then the feminine is deviant. She is damned. She is wrong. She doesn't fit in. And so what this does in our feminine energy is it creates a distortion, a wounding. So wounded feminine is essentially the feminine counterpart of us, of all of us, that has been diminished and dishonored for thousands of years. And so she has not been honored within the body. She has not got a place in the world. And so when that happens, it's like she's lost her connection to herself, her connection to her deep inner beauty, her radiance, her worthiness from within. And so instead of self-sourcing and self-honoring and self-valuing, she's gone outside of herself in order to get that value, in order to get that worthiness, in order to get that love. And so the classic wounded feminine is essentially she's emptied by life, by these thousands of years of trauma. And so she's seeking outside of herself to fill herself up. And that can be things such as love, money, fame, status, feeling valued, feeling important, feeling worthy. And so she will go outside of herself like this hungry vampire in order to fill this inner void. And so this is essentially why we see in the sisterhood this kind of, in the feminine empowerment sisterhood, I see a lot of pretending to be sisterhood, but not really honoring it. There's a lot of comparison, a lot of jealousy, a lot of not feeling enough. And it's because when we seek outside of ourselves for things, we see that there's a limited amount of resources, of love, of money, of fame, of stage outside of ourselves. And so we start to compete with each other. And this is the classic wounded feminine. So then I'm seeing a lot in the world, feminine empowerment dressed up as, yeah, you know, you can own your power and be in your power and follow my method, and this will be the way for you to be in your power. But actually, some of those people are not fully working on their wounded feminine. And so it's coming from a place of distortion where they're feeling jealousy, where they're feeling not enough, where they're feeling competitiveness with each other. And so this is a really key point that I want to talk about when we talk about the divine feminine, because divine feminine is fantastic and feminine is beautiful and it's needed in the world. But if it comes from a place of distortion, then it's taking us into more distortion. And I must say, I don't see a lot of leaders in the world. I don't see a lot of in all areas of the world. So you could call that political, educational, even spiritual. There are some, and I must say, everyone that's come on my symposium and spoken to you, you know, own their divine feminine, which is why you've so loved it, because you can feel that deep essence, that authenticity, that integrity, that love frequency that comes through. But there is a lot out there of feminine empowerment that's dressed up as divine, but in fact it's from this wounded place. Because unless we as women work on stepping fully and restoring our divine feminine in all aspects, then we are going to be working from different levels of distortion. And that doesn't mean that we have to be perfect, by the way, because we're not perfect. And, you know, we are all a work in progress. But this is a really important thing to think about when you are thinking about working on your divine feminine, because it's not just about stepping into your feminine energy. That's the key thing that I would love to share here. So then I want to now talk about the womb space, because I have been taking you through this connection on each of our talks, and you've been feeling that. And as some of you in the group have said, what is this womb space? What about men? Do they hold this space as well? And so I want to talk about this space in a very real way for you, because this isn't a teaching. This is about you feeling and knowing it for yourself. So when you connect to your womb space, it creates this inner gnosis of the divine feminine. It's like there's a direct line between you and the great emanation of the goddess. There's no intermediaries. There's no going outside of yourself to seek the divine feminine, to restore the divine feminine. There's no needed actually activations from divine feminine masters, or you know, like even like, let's say like Mother Mary or Isis or Mary Magdalene. And these are all beautiful energies that hold archetypes for us. And indeed, some of those energies do come through in the women that I work with in the work. They may see like Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene. So I'm not saying they're bad, but I'm saying when it comes through those, it's like you are giving essentially your power and your magnificence outside of yourself. So when it comes into the womb space, it's like you fully embodying that essence of that mastery that you have in yourself. So whether that's Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene or Isis or whoever, it's actually you as an emanation of the goddess. And so the sacred womb space encompasses the physical womb space. So it is about the physical uterus, except if you do not have a uterus as a woman, say you've had a hysterectomy, say you've had a birth defect where you weren't born with a womb, then you still have access to the spiritual sacred womb space around this space. So it encompasses the physical uterus, but it's not the only part of it. It's actually this whole space within your sacred womb space. So this physical space is the physical embodiment, you know, of the goddess without. So, you know, as we say, as within, so without, as within, so without. So just like if we look up into the cosmos and we see in the center of our Milky Way, this beautiful black hole, this beautiful mother goddess that is birthing stars, that is birthing galaxies, that is also swallowing up stars, swallowing up galaxies in order to be reborn. So then we have that physical manifestation, that power within ourselves, and that is our sacred womb space. So down here in the womb space, I like to see it as the temple, the embodiment, the home of our divine feminine. So we're fully embodied within our bodies, but it's like this space is the holy of holies. And if we think about it on a very practical level, this space has the energy, the magic and energy to turn an egg into a fetus, into a baby. And we're not really doing much in that space. We're kind of holding space for that magic to happen. And so there's a very magical transmutational energy held within this sacred womb space. It's extremely powerful. It's where our sacred power is held. It's where we have the ability to create, obviously, life itself, but also to birth our projects, whether that's our creative projects, our business projects, our different things that we want to bring and birth into the world. If we are working within the cosmic order, this is how we would do it naturally, bringing the masculine and feminine together and birthing it out into the world. So that all sounds lovely. And, you know, I want to talk about men. So men have a sacred power center there as well, which is the Hara. And it's also a real deep center of power, of creation, of boundaries, of their sacred power. And I've worked a lot with men and seen that also this space is really disrupted and distorted for them as well. So this sacred womb space then, why are we so disconnected from it? Why does it sound strange if I say to you, what's your relationship like with your womb, or what is your connection with your womb? It sounds, you know, in the normal world, in our world, maybe it doesn't sound funny, but I know with the majority of people, when we're talking through culture, it sounds a little bit funny. There's a very deep disconnection from this center of power. And, you know, especially for women, our bodies have been shamed. It's original sin, it's damnation, it's been chopped up into different pieces, like the Holy Virgin or the whore. It's like we've been fragmented and disconnected from this space. And so we haven't been able then to fully connect to this deep temple within, this deep place where we can start to really come into the full embodiment of our divine feminine, and to create actually holy communion with ourselves and with that emanation of the divine feminine. So what I found, and what women that work with the womb space to certain levels have found, is that when we kind of go through these initiations and clearings of the womb space, we're able to connect to this holy of holies, this very sacred space where there is such deep inner guidance for yourself, for your life, for what your purpose is, for guidance in relationship. And I'm going to be talking more about that we're able to really settle into ourselves and almost settle into our divine feminine on a very physical, visceral level, and be able to live from this space in our lives. And it's a very different state of embodiment and radiance than I've seen with other work. And I've tried many different work, from shamanic work, NLP, coaching, talking therapies, and they're all beautiful. And I believe actually they all have a space. When those different therapies are combined with this deep physical embodiment at the womb level, it changes your whole life, because you come from a space of the greatest homecoming that you could ever experience. It's like you're finally inside yourself, the divine, heaven on earth, the divine in the body, not outside of ourselves, searching for spirit, searching for answers, searching for approval, searching for love, searching for things to fill ourselves up. And so I want to just share with you some signs that may show you or indicate to you that you're disconnected from this space. So one might be really obvious. I might say to you, what's your connection with your womb? And you'll be like, what? I don't know. Where is it? How do I feel it? Like, there's no physical feeling or emotional feeling in this space. Another way that we are disconnected is if we have a sign that we've been disconnected, is if we have experienced trauma in this space. So I've talked about trauma to the feminine in general, but now I'm going to talk about trauma specifically within our sacred womb space, our sacred sexual space. So here I'm talking about sexual trauma. And that can be on all levels of existence, from child abuse, sexual abuse, to rape, to non-consensual sex. I wasn't sure if it was or not. And I must say, a lot of women that I work with, it's really common that when we start to delve into this on a very deep level, they start to realize that some of their interactions, relationships, sexual experiences have actually been non-consensual, and they hadn't been able to fully admit that to themselves or own that because of what that meant. And then that brings up a lot of shame, because they realize that they didn't speak out. Trauma in this area can also be things like I talked about, miscarriages, which, if you've experienced a miscarriage, or you've had a friend that's experienced a miscarriage, it's kind of like, yeah, well, that's 3 in 1, or whatever the statistic is that they kind of quote at you. So yeah, well, it's a good job, because it means that you can get pregnant, doesn't it? So there's this kind of sweeping over and not allowing us to fully feel that grief and that pain that we may be feeling. There's also other things such as terminations, abortions, that really, when we experience this sort of trauma on any level at this space, it creates a disconnection, because in society we have not been given the tools of this ancient womb wisdom, this ancient feminine cosmic mystery school of how to cleanse and heal our wounds within this space. And so when there's trauma there, it creates this disconnection because we haven't been given the tools to deal with it. And I've also found it's really common with women that they may have worked through their issues on some level, you know, of, let's say, I forgive myself for termination and I know it wasn't the right time because I was 19 years old, say. And we've kind of made peace with it somewhere up here, but our body hasn't made peace with it. Our womb hasn't made peace with it. And we have not allowed her to speak. And we have not sat with her in her grief and her emotion and her pain. We've tried to just bypass it. So this is one of the key things that creates a disconnection from this space. And unfortunately, a lot of women have some kind of trauma or grief around their womb space and their sacred sexual anatomy. Related to that then is if we have had difficult relationships. So that can be anything from narcissistic relationships. I have personally experienced a narcissistic relationship, as in me and another man, so not a family member. And that was extremely damaging to my womb space, because when we are in an abusive relationship, whether it's mental abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual, what that abuse does, let's say it's emotional abuse, is it creates a contraction, and it's like that their energy is physically invading our energy, especially if we're sensitive women, if we're empaths, we can feel their energy and we almost want to kind of take it on. And this is linking also to this sacred prostitute archetype. Some of us have this kind of transmutational energy in the womb where we're able to transmute energy from it, but we've lost the wisdom and power in how to do that. So sometimes we're actually taking on a lot of trauma from our relationships in order to try and cleanse and take the wall out of men, but we're not doing it consciously. And so that can be very damaging and create a real disconnection from this space. The other ways that we can feel a disconnection from this space is when we don't know ourselves, or we don't really know our path, or we're not sure on which way to go. Perhaps you're at a crossroads and you can't decide which way to go. Perhaps you don't know your true authentic voice or way to bring out your work into the world, or what your work is. Maybe you've done lots of different disciplines and you're trying to kind of stick them together, but it's not, what's missing is you, your essence, your beauty, your love into that service to the world. And so then linked to that is not being able to fully birth your creative projects. So maybe when you close your eyes, you have a vision of how your work should be in the world and how many people it should be impacting, and perhaps even how much income you should be making. But then when you open your eyes and you look at your service, it's way off. And if you think about it, this creative power to birth things, if this is laden down with toxicity and trauma, and there's a disconnection from this space, then we're not able to fully birth our creative projects within the divine matrix. We may be able to create them from distorted matrices, but they're not able to reach their full potential. And I would say even more now, because this matrix is being dismantled as this feminine is rising. And so the old ways of empire, me, myself, and I, in authenticity, the veil is falling, and those old strategies are not going to be able to be as successful anymore. It really is requiring us to step into the most divine part of ourselves that we can, knowing that we're not perfect, but, you know, working and owning our path and working from that space of we're on the way, and we're working through our distortions and birthing through this divine matrix of the masculine and feminine coming together, rather than one trying to overtake the other. The other thing that I find really common is some women find it very difficult to be grounded. And I think I've done a whole video just on this, because, you know, there is this kind of movement now, you know, must be grounded, must be rooted. And sometimes the reason why we can't be grounded or rooted is because there's trauma there. And so instead of forcing the grounding and the rooting, it's like, help yourself work through this trauma that is stopping you from grounding, that is stopping you from being in your body. Because most of us in our divine nature, we want to be in our bodies. We chose as souls to come into a physical body in order to learn, in order to experience, and in order to add something to this evolutionary mix. You know, we came here with a purpose. And so we're not able to be fully in our bodies. It's not because we're stupid or we don't know how to, or we need grounding techniques, although they may help. It's normally because we have trauma in our body that we don't want to experience, or we don't know how to transmute. And so I find that is a really key common thing that I find is a sign that there's trauma there and there's things to be released. So I'm sure there's more, but they're the key ones that are coming to mind. And so now I just want to talk about what can happen for you when you start to really connect to this womb temple. You start to really clear this temple space out, and you start to really live and birth from this temple space. And I must say, my womb is now really cramping, and that is, for me, is a sign that she is awakening. And I really believe and feel that our wombs speak to each other. And I wonder if any of you on the call are feeling that in some way, because yeah, my womb, I'm getting this real yes about what that would mean for the world if more of us women were really connected to this sacred space within, that we held ourselves as sacred, that we held ourselves as divine in the body, and that we held ourselves as being able to birth ourselves from this space, birth ourselves and our projects from this space. So when this space is fully online, then when it's cleared and when you are fully restored this divine feminine temple, as I said, it's like the greatest homecoming you can ever experience. And all of the clients that have done this work with me have said, it's the great, every woman must do this work. So once they've done it, they all say every woman must do this work, because you really come home to yourself. It's like you're your own safety net, your own comfort, your own center to be able to navigate life. And from this space, you're able to navigate those ups and downs, those challenges that we have in life, because you're inside yourself. It's like you are inside yourself and you've got your own back, and you're okay with all of you. You've worked through the shadows and the traumas, so there's nothing kind of that scares you anymore in life. There's nothing that can really knock you fully off, because you are in you, not elsewhere in timelines or different dimensions, or scared to be in your own body. It's like a really solid sense of self. And then it also creates them from that space feeling full of yourself. And isn't that funny that if I was to say to you, you're full of yourself, that's actually a put down, that's actually kind of an attack. But we are here to be bringing that divine light into our bodies. So being full of yourself actually means being full of this divine light, of this radiance. And you know, you see women that have done this work, they are glowing, they have this radiance, and it's because they're full of themselves in the most beautiful way. They're full of their inner beauty, their inner wisdom, and their inner radiance, and that shines out. It stops all this hungry ghosting and vampirism of trying to fill yourself up from external accolades, and you start to really settle into yourself and start to feel okay with whatever you have. And then from that space of kind of being in gratitude for yourself and life, you're able then to create from this beautiful divine feminine quality of joy. She creates because she would love to, because her desire force is wanting to create something or loving to create something. It's not come from neediness of, I need to create this so that I'm enough and so that I'm recognized enough or famous enough or whatever those external manifestations are. You create from this deep bellied, joyous, divine feminine goddess that's almost laughing as she is creating. And it brings so much joy into your creations and actually starting to appreciate your successes, your external successes as the manifestation of those birthings, rather than on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. You actually become really present and start to really enjoy these things. And then some of the other side effects are you start to get into beautiful relationship. And actually tomorrow we have a dear mentor of mine and friend, Diana Bewley, who's going to be talking to us about becoming ready for sacred union. So you're able, when the space is, to really start to invite that in, invite in more abundance, invite in whatever, you know, you're wanting to birth into the world in a very deep, deep, beautiful space. So that for me is the restoration of the divine feminine. It's about making sure you're working in divine feminine, not in this wounded space that I talked about at the beginning, and about doing it in a physical, embodied way in the body, and realizing that you are as magnificent as to all of those external goddesses and archetypes that you see. And you're able to connect to that within this sacred womb space, and then able to birth your creations like a goddess, a cosmic goddess, human in the body. So I think that's all I wanted to talk about. So I wanted to now open it up for questions, comments. What is this bringing up for you? Have you got any questions about what I've spoken about? Perhaps I didn't cover something that you thought I would speak about in this talk. Let me know in the comments, and I'm going to also check on Facebook. Thank you, Jazz. So such deep appreciation for this empowering, immense clarity of a very complex and confused energy that is divine feminine. Well, it's confused because we've got all different people saying it's divine feminine when sometimes it's not, unfortunately. Okay. So I'm just having a check to see if there's any questions, and I see people are watching on Facebook as well. Hello, hi Whitney, hi Sarah. So we call you Anne then. I'm beautiful to see people in Zoom as well. You can see Anne and Diana, Jazz and Jewel and Lucy and Marielle and Rasheen. Hello, hello. So let me know if you have any questions or comments, and indeed if you're watching the replay, then please let me know if you have any questions, and I will go and check them later on or tomorrow morning. And whilst I'm just checking to see if there's any questions, I want to remind you tomorrow is our last talk. We're going to be talking to Diana Bewley, as I said, about becoming ready for sacred union, and that is going to be at 6 p.m. Central European time. So if you're in the Facebook group, if you look at the cover photo, I've got that in different time zones. So go and have a look at that. And then on Sunday, we've got the closing ceremonies, which I'll put details up about in the group. So Jazz, how would you suggest to begin this work? Okay, that's really, really good. No, not necessarily my offerings. How to begin this work is starting to very, very simply connect to your womb and almost make a conscious decision to start a relationship and start to connect with your womb. So that can be putting your hands on your womb, breathing and starting to connect and feel your womb. I do have a free, I did create a meditation. Yeah, so I have created a free womb activation meditation. So I will make sure I put that in the link in the Facebook group, and you can just download it. It's 10 minutes long, and it's helping you start to connect and feel this space. So yes, you can go and get that. So what do I offer? So I work with women. I love working with women in circle because there's a magic and energy when women come together and do this work. So I work in circle with women online to go through this womb awakening process of starting to cleanse and clear relationships, ancestral distortions of masculine, distortions of feminine from this space, so you're able to start to very physically and spiritually and emotionally connect and live from this space and start to commune with this goddess within. Yes, right. Let me see if there's any other questions. Sarah says, I think what we often see as empowered feminine is not really divine feminine. Yes, exactly. So I did a whole video for this on YouTube, and it's somewhere in my group, and it's called Distorted Feminine Dressed Up as Divine. And actually, some of you have gone and found that video and watched it. I really recommend you go and watch it, because there's a lot of people talking about divine feminine right now, and when I read it, it's a bit scary, to be honest, because they're teaching things like, just one example is coming to mind: you must submit to the masculine. And you know, this can be dangerous, because for me, this dance, this cosmic dance between the masculine and feminine, has to happen when there's trust and there's love and there's a knowingness, and it's like the masculine has provided space for that feminine, for the woman to open up her divine feminine, to be held and to receive. And if that isn't there, then submitting to the masculine is a bit like, oh, I could have submitted to my narcissistic relationship, and actually I did, and that wasn't good for me. That wasn't good for my divine feminine. So that's just one example I can speak to, where I'm seeing that divine feminine is actually distorted, and they're pretending it's divine and it's not. So and there's other things as well, like, you know, female empowerment, but it's not fully embodied, and other things that I can't think of now. But go and have a look at the video, and you can watch this replay, because I talk about it more at the beginning. Okay, so I don't think there's any other questions. No. So thank you so much for joining, whether you've watched the replay or you've joined live. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being part of this symposium. It's been amazing. Like, I've loved hearing everyone speak. And tomorrow we have Diana Bewley talking about becoming ready for sacred union at 6 p.m. Central European time. So come and join us then. Ask questions in the group, and I will make sure that we keep fielding your answers out. Wishing you a lovely day, evening. Thank you so much. Lots of love.